Dexter is a classic series that defined the mid 2000s. The big question on my mind is how good is Dexter Original Sin? Getting right into it, episode 1 establishes right off the bat that they're going to use a large amount of nostalgia to hook the viewer. But while it is very true that there is a heavy reliance on nostalgia, the actors make the roles their own throughout the course of the series. Their mannerisms and speech patterns may be the same, but the performances are transformative as they do more than enough to make it refreshing. That being said, the characterization of Dexter, Deborah, and Harry, as well as the other characters in the show, are done very well, so it doesn't take away from the original series. In this first episode, we see that Dexter and Deborah go to a college party where Dex saves his sister from being taken advantage of. This party is used as a vehicle to introduce Sofia Rivera, who is Deborah's best friend and the love interest for Dexter. More importantly, though, the prequel establishes the backstory of Dexter and his first kill, just as the original series did. Right off the bat, young Dexter is done fantastically with the delivery and facial expressions matching the great Michael C. Hall. Patrick Gibson, the actor portraying young Dexter, is doing an amazing job, and I think that they deserve a lot more credit for what they did with the show. Additionally, the showrunner did an amazing job with the parallels within the show, with Dexter feeling his first victim's heart and the rumbling of feet on the volleyball court, as well as Deb's quote-unquote kill shot on the volleyball court syncing with Dexter plunging the knife into his victim. Dexter then takes her earrings as a trophy, something that will serve as a plot point going forward. Also, something about Dexter feeding this person to a gator is hilarious. In terms of portrayals, the renditions of Deborah, Dexter, and Masuka are picture perfect, with Michael C. Hall's narration the cherry on top. The cinematography and framing is also reminiscent of the original show because of Clyde Phillips coming back to direct this series. He is the person who was the original showrunner for Dexter. The last thing to note in this episode is how Sarah Michelle Gellar's Tanya Martin asked Dexter to work at Miami Metro at the end of the episode, which starts him on his path as a forensic investigator. Episode 2 reveals just how much Dexter Original Sin is not only about the origin story of Dexter Morgan, but how it is just as much about Harry Morgan, played by Christian Slater. The best way I can compare this is to season 1 and 2 with how the original series crafted the backstory and did the character building for Dexter. Harry talks to Dexter about blending in, to which Dexter responds that working at Miami Metro is like methadone for meth addicts, helping him control his urges. This is compared to Harry's struggles to quit smoking and drinking, something that inevitably does kill him. Dexter spends time with Angel, and he is told the tragic story of Renee and how he took his own life after his mother was killed by a loan shark. Knowing how Dexter is, the episode ends with Dexter planning to exact revenge for Ren and get this drug Kingpin off the streets for good, being a vigilante like Harry taught him to do so. It circles back to the analogy from before, with Dexter saying that methadone won't work and that the dark passenger is creeping out of the shadows.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
Before we move on, in the background of episode 2, there are several scenes showing a kidnapped child of a judge and how they cut off his finger for ransom, or so we think it's for ransom at this point in time. Something else that's pretty interesting is that in a blink and you'll miss it moment in this episode, Dexter is approached by a man who looks eerily similar to his brother Brian, who asked to sit with Dexter at a restaurant. It obviously makes sense because Brian most definitely would be scoping out his brother, keeping tabs on him, which is revealed to be the case in the next couple episodes. Right off the bat, they're establishing how Brian will impact this series, with Brian briefly shown in a flashback with Harry meeting Dexter as a child for the first time. These little Easter eggs and world building done within Dexter Original Sin are what makes it so great. This episode ends with Dexter planning to exact revenge for Renee and get this drug Kingpin off the streets for good, being a vigilante like Harry had taught him to do. In what might be the most funny interaction in the show, Masuka makes Dexter a fake ID under false pretenses to go to Titty Tuesday.
I had no idea you liked to get down. Hey, you and me, Titty Tuesdays next week. Half-price lap dances at Stir Crazy.
This ID uses the moniker Patrick Bateman as a nod to American Psycho. When Dexter returns home, he notices that the earrings of the nurse he killed are being worn by Sophia, which has him spiraling. He then confides this information to Harry, who scolds him for it, saying that he's a monster for keeping a trophy. Deborah agrees to get the earrings back from Sophia, on the condition that Dexter helps the two of them get cocaine. The rest of the episode follows Dexter as he stalks Ferrer to get close to him, borrowing money just like Renee did and getting Ferrer to shoot a bullet at him, which confirms his involvement in the murder of Renee's mother. Dexter uses some of the money given to him by Tony Ferrer to get the new earrings for Sophia. Once Dexter gets those earrings back, he takes Tony Ferrer to a unique kill room and then throws him to the alligators along with the earrings of the nurse. Everything seems to be okay until a piece of Tony Ferrer's body floats to the surface ominously. As opposed to episodes 1 and 2, episode 3 builds on the established character of Dexter Morgan while allowing Patrick Gibson to make it his own. It succeeds in doing so while also paying homage to Michael C. Hall's portrayal. At the same time, we see how Harry Morgan's relationship with Laura Moser developed through the flashbacks, explaining why he takes Dexter in after endangering her life through using her as a criminal informant. Episode 4 is important as it shows Dexter's first time dealing with the loss of a child. It reveals how Dexter still can empathize and be affected by seeing the death of a kid. This is then mirrored by how Harry feels guilt for the death of Laura Moser. This episode in particular focuses on Dexter trying to prove that a guy with mob ties nicknamed Mad Dog is responsible for the death of that kid. This is easily the weakest episode of Dexter Original Sin for me, as it reads more like an episode from the later seasons of Dexter. The more important things to note though are that Deborah has a new boyfriend and how Dexter talks with Mad Dog about the blurring of lines between his job and his life, as well as highlighting the sloppiness of Dexter as he's obviously still very much new to this whole killing thing. This is evidenced by the fact that Mad Dog escapes with Dexter chasing him down until he's eventually hit by a car. Episode 5 gives us a high Dexter Morgan, which I didn't know I needed, but an overindulgent pot brownie eating Dexter is pretty funny. Harry has Dexter fingerprint the guy who ran over Mad Dog, which is pretty insane when you think about it, which the guy says that he obviously didn't see anybody else. This interrogation is important though, as Maria says that the kid shouldn't get hung up over this and try to live his life. This serves as an unintended message for Dexter, who needs to adapt or he'll get caught. Dexter then learns about horse tranquilizers from his boss, Tanya. Honestly, Sarah Michelle Gellar feels rather out of place in Dexter Original Sin. He only really serves to be a passing mentor for a minute or two in each episode, but the most important thing from her character is how she introduces Dexter to these tranquilizers, which are part of his signature MO in the original series.
What kind of drug could sedate an animal that large?
Probably a torphine. It's more powerful than morphine to like the nth degree. I learned that from a jockey I used to ride.
I'm buzzing we're going on this boat. I'm gonna be riding these waves like I'm riding some bird's fucking back end.
If anything, the B-plot story of this episode feels more, I don't know, rounded out. While in court, Harry is burned with him throwing away an alibi for Levi, who is on trial for the murders of 8 people and including 2 kids.
Tuesday.
It's Thursday. You think a jury is gonna trust your memory of what happened last week? You're like a white crayon, useless. Now get the hell out of my sight.
Because Harry disregarded this alibi, the case is then thrown out in court, further showing Harry's dissent and distrust for the legal system while still being a part of it. This obviously being one of the main reasons for the implementation of the code with Dexter, using him as a vigilante and as a tool. In a flashback, Harry is told by his wife Doris that she's pregnant with Deborah. This happens while he's in the middle of the affair with Laura Moser. This episode is pretty much hinging on Harry's morality and how it is affecting him and those around him. Harry's morality is then tested as he trails Levi before being drugged and saved by Dexter.
Oops.
This is where he is shown that Dexter has upgraded his procedure now, with Harry wrapped up like one of Dex's victims. Dexter lets Harry out of the wrap, where he says that he was made to take care of people like Levi, and to let him be himself, which Dex says all he heard was his dad saying take him out.
We already have the proof. Take him out.
Episode 6 follows Dexter as he stalks Levi to do just that. It also reveals that the homicides that Maria LaGuerta has been investigating have been done by a serial killer who's trying to find their niche. This is directly because of the insight that Dexter gives Maria, saying that it is a serial killer on the second kill. This episode also shows Captain Spencer's kid get kidnapped, just like the judges. This episode is more and more about self-discovery, not only for Dexter, but also for Harry. For Harry, the flashbacks show how his wife, Deborah, was aware of him cheating with Laura Moser, but with the birth of Deborah, he tells him he has to stop it. All the while, Laura is wanting out of her criminal informant role. For Dexter, his kill of Levi will be his third, and it'll label him a serial killer. These kills are mirrored with the ones being done by the other serial killer, which is inevitably revealed to be Brian Moser. Dexter's brother. This is very intricate and shows how the two brothers are both dealing with their homicidal urges at the same exact time, both becoming serial killers around the same period. But for Dexter, he shows just how morally just he is as a killer, living by Harry's code and killing Levi. In addition, Dexter also has his sexual awakening, with Sophia cornering him in the bathroom. There's yet another Easter egg shown as Dexter stalks Levi with an ice truck in the street, which is obviously in reference to Brian, who uses an ice truck in the original series. Episode 7 starts with Dexter's dumping ground at Alligator Alley being found. The arm of Tony Ferrer that we saw a few episodes back is being investigated, and Dexter throws it to the gators and says that he was nearly killed by one, which somehow everyone in the police department just believes. Additionally, Dexter has the body of Levi in his trunk, and not one single homicide detective could sniff out the smell of a rotting corpse emanating from Dexter's truck. I understand that it's a prequel and we know Dexter hasn't gotten caught up until this point, but you just kind of have to suspend yourself into a state of disbelief with this plot point. The captain's son, Nicky, gets his finger cut off just like the judge's kid. Dexter puts the pieces together that the person who abducted Nicky is actually Captain Spencer, trying to get back at his ex-wife. Some other developments are Sophia thinking that Dexter is cheating, which blows up in Deborah's face, with Deborah punching her teammate, Tiffany, and getting kicked off the volleyball team. This is an incredibly solid episode as it builds the story for the final 3 of the season. Episode 8 sees Deborah go with her boyfriend Gio to Bimini, and Dexter spends the whole episode tracking her down. This whole episode just feels like a filler one, as it is only really important for the reason that we see Dexter get the classic boat from season 1 as he borrows it from Camilla at the station.
Hey, Camilla. Is that offer still good?
This episode, similar to episode 7, is just about building continuity towards events we already know. We are also shown how Harry willingly hides Brian's identity to throw people off his involvement in the death of Laura and the adoption of Dexter. After Dexter saves Deborah and drives her back on the boat, we are shown how he realizes that he can use the ocean as his new dumping ground. The final piece of continuity from this episode comes from the shipping container, where Dexter watches a man get sawed in half by a chainsaw, leading him down his path as a serial killer. Episode 9 starts with us being reintroduced to Brian Moser, who is sitting playing bingo with a bunch of retirees. Brian also has his own inner voice as he's talking to a psychologist or a therapist. This is important to note as this is an episode specifically focusing on Brian, not really on Dexter or any of the other characters. We see how Dexter was taken away from Brian as kids in the shipping container, with Brian's eyes fixated on his mother's mutilated body. Both Brian and Dexter are taken in by the Morgans, with Brian being removed from the house after he tries to suffocate Deborah with a pillow. The case officer who deals with Brian and Dexter's case is the same woman who's at bingo with Brian. But before we move on, I think it's hilarious seeing this kid slap Christian Slater. Dexter stalks Captain Spencer and abducts him at an arcade, something that was foreshadowed by Captain Spencer's son a few episodes prior, saying that he wanted his dad to take him to the arcade.
My dad used to take me to the arcade every weekend until he got promoted.
Dexter's interaction with Captain Spencer on the table is the most iconic for Patrick's portrayal. He still imitates the great Michael C. Hall, but he makes it his own despite those inflections and mannerisms. I think this specifically stems from Dexter vindictively cutting off one of Captain Spencer's fingers to mirror what he did with the 2 other boys. This same vindictive nature is also mirrored by Brian, who uses a chainsaw to kill the caseworker. And episode 9 is really about just setting up episode 10 while also having these cool little moments that keep spurning you forward, which episode 10 sees Dexter confronting Captain Spencer before he's left with a choice: save Nicky or give in to his urges and kill the captain. This is the central argument for Dexter as a character, as he saves the kid, and this is mirrored by Brian's confrontation with Harry, as Harry suggests that he can provide a better life for Dexter than Brian can, to which Brian reluctantly agrees and lets Harry continue raising Dexter as his own. Harry praises Dexter for upholding the code and for channeling his urges for saving a child. This is the overall character arc for Dexter throughout the prequel series and pretty much throughout all of season 1 and 2, showing how he balances all of his urges with the changes going on around him. For that reason, it connects incredibly well with season 1 of Dexter, and obviously that's by design. I am hopeful that we will get a second season of Dexter Original Sin, as it was pretty solid. But with Michael C. Hall returning as Dexter Morgan in Dexter Resurrections later this summer, we have to see just exactly what will happen. For those who want to get into Dexter as a series, I would wholeheartedly recommend watching Dexter Original Sin as a way to get immersed into the franchise, as it does an exceptional job of building both season 1 and 2 of Dexter while uniquely being something of its own.